Everybody, welcome back to day three of this kickoff meeting for the current emerging threats to crops innovation lab. I have to say, it's been wonderful so far. We didn't know as a team what to expect, but we've really enjoyed the engagement and just the broadness of the participants geographically, and then from perspectives of their domain expertise. And this particularly came out yesterday, which is really nice. And that leads us very well into this day three, the final day, which is to focus on the stressors themselves. So we're the current and emerging threats to crops innovation lab. So what are those crops? Certainly, if we were just to respond, we would come up with a variety of things that are important to us. We heard yesterday from Subi at ICIPE, which of course is a leading organization, about snails in rice. And then the question, is that really important? We also briefly touched on things like African armyworm, which is emerging. Is that important? And then we, of course, all collectively understand the massive response and stress to locusts, and then prior to that fall armyworm, and prior to that striga and maize leaf necrosis, all on just one crop, which is maize in Africa. But what about Central America? What about Nepal? And so one of the things that we want to avoid, that we at PlantVillage, before we became the Innovation Lab, have seen a lot, is this idea that Annalise mentioned yesterday of pest of the week. And this was a really nice phrase that came from Christina Owen, who was our program officer at the Gates Foundation and has subsequently gone off to work at a botanical garden. But I really like this because Christina was really crucial to the response of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation during the Locust Crisis. They gave $10 million to FAO, and we got about $1 million of that to work on the platform and build that up. And it was really a good message not to respond to things just because there's a big red flashy light. Sirens get our attention for a reason, but if we live in a world of sirens, we'll become exhausted. We won't know where to look, what to do, and that's no way to run an international response. So we have to be very thoughtful about it, and one of the ways in which we framed it in our application was, could we look at each of the countries we're interested in, so each of the 21 Feed the Future countries, and could we look at the top 5 crops and then the top 5 diseases of those? So we're talking about diseases, pests, and weeds. Could we look at those stressors all together? So that was just one idea, but we hope that in the course of our discussion today, we'll have other ideas as well, and particularly from everybody here. Okay, so we finish off. I love these polls that Annalise does for how you're feeling. It's always good to. It's great. I don't ask myself that until I'm in a meeting with her and she has these polls. I think they're great. So I think we're all doing, on average, or not on average, the majority is doing well, which is good. So going in the right direction. I just I put in fantastic because I just had a call, even though I started at 7 a.m. and I just finished. It was really interesting. So I think it just speaks to the great enjoyment one can have from doing our jobs, because we get to spend time with, I can see John there, Dr. Chalal, looking really lovely in his shirt. It's just really nice to be able to spend time with people across the world in this format. Okay, so on with the show. I'm gonna make sure I have the right talk up here. So I'll just start off. Right, so this is day 3, and we just want to provide an overview. Probably won't be 10 minutes per threat, but we want to go through the different threats that we have in front of us. And so Serge put these together yesterday, and he's going to talk about two components of this. So I'll look at weeds, and he'll come on and talk about diseases and pests. But this is just an ad hoc selection by us. We're just choosing a few. This is not comprehensive. I don't know if Christy Sprague is on the call. Yes, she is. Great. And Christy is our weed person at MSU and is bringing a lot of domain expertise here and helping us. But we just chose a few examples. Of course, the world is full of weeds, and weeds is anything you don't want to grow, essentially. But we just chose a few examples. One of which is Partenium. And this was a big focus of the previous innovation lab on integrated pest management out of Virginia Tech. They had done some very interesting work in Ethiopia in controlling this. It's just one of these very fast spreading plants, which are noxious and then create problems for forage, but also create problems for other plants that you're trying to grow. So whether it's food for animals or forage, or it's crops themselves. And so, because a lot of weeds are allelopathic, meaning they produce chemicals under the ground, they engage in chemical warfare with other plants, and they're very, very good at this. They're also pioneer species, meaning they come in very quickly and spread very quickly. And then they create these enormous problems. We heard about this from Winkett and John the other day, which is Striga in Kenya. There's a few species of this, and we're looking at Striga harmontica, and this is an extremely wonderful and very interesting plant. It lives in the ground. It's a hemiparasite, so it takes its nutrients from the root of the host. So you can think of it like a malarial parasite. It's taking, as a parasite does, its resources from its host, but also it's able to have some photosynthesis when it comes above ground. But when it comes above ground, it's too late. The damage has already been done. Those nutrients have been taken away from the maize plant, and the innovation lab in Kenya, led by the Dream Team, is using a bioherbicide in order to tackle this. So this is some research that came out of Montana State, and now it's the company. And this is a bioherbicide that can be used in tackling Striga, and it produces amino acids which can prevent the Striga from germinating or growing effectively. Very, very cool. This is also a same group, same order of plants. This is a vampire weed, which is also a parasite. It's become quite a problem of rice. And so again, pulling nutrients that we want to go into the food, whether it's a maize, corn, or rice kernel, these are being taken into the parasite. Christy Sprague at MSU has been really helping us a lot with this problem, and the Dream Team in Kenya that we've heard a lot about have been really pioneering the response. This is a mesquite, which was introduced. It's from the central deserts of the United States, in Arizona and Texas, and also in North America generally, so also from Mexico. And it has an extremely long taproot, and that taproot can go down as much as 30 or 40 meters or 120 feet, and it pulls the moisture out of the landscape, so it dries it up. It was introduced on purpose in order to stabilize the land, and it has that benefit. But then it's, as we were hearing from one of our team members, Fulfin, in Marsabit County, it's really causing catastrophic problems for the pastoralists, because it has poisonous thorns which get into the mouth of the animals. It also provides hiding places for hyenas, which would attack the cattle, and it dries out the landscape. So we've been dealing with that as part of our innovation lab. And then other examples, Brissy Starbur is another one, just one of these fast-spreading noxious plants. And so I can hand over to Serge now, who can discuss diseases.
Yeah, thank you. So for diseases, we have different groups, like, for viruses, and these are really interesting groups, because it's the idea you can see the symptoms, and even sometimes symptomless, on basically all the different type of plants. And here we have different issues. At first is to know which type of virus is infecting the crops, and also the strategy of how to manage these virus diseases. Sometimes if we really can educate farmers and the communities to prevent the infection by using good agricultural practices, or maybe using clean seed system, we can really manage these diseases. Like we know, like yesterday in our group, we have one researcher working in Ghana that's having this issue because even the resistant seeds are available. The seed system is making things not the management difficult, because one thing is to have the resistant seeds, another thing is to promote the diffusion of these seeds system in the different communities. And we all, like, we have the MLN that happening in East and Southern Africa, but basically we don't know what's happening in the other part of the continent and the other diseases that are occurring in the different cereals. So it will be really good if we can know what is in there and which type of complex we have in the different cereals and the other crops, to first know what's happening before establishing some management system. And the groundnut rosette is still there. No, it was some objective of management with different innovation labs, but the situation is still happening. One thing is, don't know if the resistant varieties that already deployed, the resistance is breaking, or it's a new kind of complex that is occurring there, or maybe the farmers don't have this resistant or tolerant varieties. So it's to really understand what's going on the ground and being able to address it efficiently. And cassava mosaic disease and brown streak disease. And here we really need to know how the disease is moving across the different place of the Africa continent, and to understand how we can efficiently manage the disease. We know from our previous experience in PlantVillage in Busia County and some other places in Kenya that just a use of the app and the community addressing the problem in the community size for managing some clean planting materials can really help to address this disease system. So like I said previously, if we can integrate the management problem in the community level, we can address this situation, and with the use of the new technology, understand how the disease is moving and where we need to really address the situation in the different communities. And so far, we don't know how the cassava brown streak disease is spreading through Central Africa, going to West Africa. That's officially still a part of the continent that still don't have the disease, but we need to have more eyes on the ground to understand how the disease of this cassava brown streak disease is propagating, and cassava mosaic disease, and still, because we have different variants also, that to understand which variant is where to better manage it. And the potato disease and infecting some other solanacea, the early blight and late blight, we have the opportunity to work with SIP for these issues, and who said fungal diseases is also addressing the use of fungicide. So understanding how the disease is evolving and the resistance to the fungicide. So it's with SIP, like we talk about that the first day, we would like to establish a management system and telling the farmers when they should use the fungicides. So if you use efficiently the fungicides, this means that we're protecting the farmers, the communities, and also we avoid the resistance to build up in the different crops. And here with SIP, they will be addressing the genotyping and understand if we already have some resistant strains on the ground, and if yes, we have some resistance, how we need to address this resistance and not having them spread around the different places of the different continents, and also helping to work to have the efficient fungicide that need to be used, because now with the different farmers community, people just spraying the fungicide without looking to see what's the weather, if I should apply the fungicide or not. So the education will really help to manage it. And also, like we know, in many places around the world, most of the seeds are coming from Europe, is to build the capacities of having people having their seeds in the different continents to avoid the dispersion of the seeds around the world, the strains around the world, I would say. Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in and maybe make a point about late blight. For those of you who are plant pathologists, this is, of course, an iconic disease. It is the birth of plant pathology in 1846 with the work of Reverend Berkeley and the Murine disease, and then the extension in the 1850s with the Barry, who called it Phytophthora infestans, the infectious destroyer of plants, Thor, like in Greek with the hammer. And so we know this, and it's a sort of disease that we talk about all the time in general issues around plant pathology and the importance of disease. So it's very, very important. But perhaps not well known, although I try to repeat it ad nauseum, is that it's also the birth of extension. So extension began in 1846 in Dublin, in Ireland, because of the Irish potato famine caused by late blight. And that extension model put forward by Lord Clarendon through an investment of about $300,000 in modern terms was to invest in people to go to the farmers to help them get off potatoes. So he went to the south and the west of the country. And I mentioned that because it was an example of adaptive management. We don't know what's happening, but we have to do something. And it was also an example of people going to fields. And I think that's a really important point to stress after all the things that we've heard about our dream team. And the dream team in many, many different countries working with farmers directly. And to my mind, there's just not enough of that. I think we want to make sure that we understand that the international response, the national response, and the local response to diseases is very much constantly in evolution. So before we didn't have extension, then we had it because of the Irish potato famine, the extension in what was called the traveling doctors in the Vandelair in the German system, the cooperative extension system in the US in the 1900s, and so on and so forth. Lots of examples. And what we're doing is also a continual evolution of that with the dream team. I think that's a really important point. And just keep that in mind. This is an important concept for us, and it's an important disease that drives home the fact that we're constantly changing. Okay, I'll give it back to Serge. Serge, do you want to share your screen, or are you happy for me to move slides forward?
Yes, you can move. That will save us time. And yes, coffee diseases, sorry for the mistake here, coffee berry disease. And the coffee rust is really a non and unknown problem because it's one of the limiting factors of the coffee production around the world. And recently, with our expansion of the Dream Team in Uganda, we got the opportunity to already work on having an AI system to detect the coffee rust diseases on the different farms. And in the same time, the observation is really helpful for detecting some management methods, because we have some hyperparasites that we can use to manage this disease organically, and having the eyes on the ground is really helpful for that, to see the different interaction of the disease with some other management method that we can use. So, and we have the coffee berry disease that's also there, and to really help the farmers to identify the diseases, and also integrating some other management methods with some other partners. So that's a really opening question that we have here, to see how we can efficiently manage the coffee diseases on the ground with the farmers, and having the production, keep the production with on top, because we, like, every year we have the demand of the coffee, the coffee production that increasing every year, and we have the disease also that popping out every year. So it's a really dynamic crop that we need to really address with the different diseases. And the wheat head blast, and we have also with diseases coming, but the wheat head blast is something when we talk with the different experts, we know that it's something that's spreading around. That's another issue that's coming on the top of the other wheat diseases like the wheat yellow rust and the wheat stripe rust, like, you know. But we have this, the wheat rust, the tar spot, also that a disease happen in America, in Central America, and in Northern America that really, and the situation in Africa also is not really clear about the tar spot disease. So we add it in this list just to bring the conversation how we can address which one is. It's really complicated if we want to put a top disease on the list without the countries that have some different issues. So, but having these maize, tar spot, the wheat blast, we, in our discussion, we will know in which country, what is the priority to address in wheat growing system or the maize growing system. And the black sigatoka for banana and banana Xanthomonas wilts. The Xanthomonas wilts are really, we have the opportunity to see the picture coming from the farmers, and you can see these diseases coming from different areas. Like the black sigatoka really spread around Eastern Africa and Asia, and also we have more and more issues of this disease coming from West Africa. So we also need to understand what's happening. And the banana Xanthomonas, as you know, that's a really hard question for banana disease management, and all these issues in banana coming with some other viruses also in banana need to be addressed. And we kind of hard situation because you don't know, as I said, which one to prioritize. But talking with having the expert from the different countries here will help us to start listing all these issues and saying, okay, which one we need to work on first and in this part of the world, and which one we need to put in second place in this part of the world. So it's kind of discussing, and really the surveillance, having more surveillance will help to prioritize the issues. And soil-borne, that's kind of really hard topic personally, because having wilting really not telling us what's happening in the bottom of the plant. And if we can pull out and see these nodes, we can say, okay, we have a nematode there, but sometimes it's hard for the example of cyst nematodes also to see if you don't have a microscope to highlight here, like we pick up the picture from Marisol lab, like we can see what's happening for cyst nematode. But we also have some issues like bacterial wilts and also fusarium wilts. And these are all issues of soil-borne disease management. How we can have some integrated pest management system that even the farmer doesn't have the opportunity to know which pest is on the ground. We can have some simple method for helping them to grow more food. So as a scientist, we maybe sometimes need to know exactly what's happening there, but the farmer's issue is what doesn't know, okay, how I can grow more food, even I don't know which pest is inside. So it's to work to have a simple method, what we can tell the farmers, okay, do that and that if you want to manage any kind of disease that's growing on in the soil. So it's to, and further we can understand in the details what's going on. But personally, I think we need to find a way how we can manage things quickly and address the problem in the different communities without knowing in details what is in the ground. So if we can find some easy methods helping the farmer to grow more food, and come later now with some really fine tools to understand the details of the disease complex. Yes, David, to you.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself to say something. Not very effectively. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the nematodes. So this will be an example of having an RFA process. So really a really excellent way to do a diagnosis of nematodes would be something we're very, very keen on as well. But okay, I'll try and go back to where you were, Serge. Okay. Okay, sorry, go ahead. This is still you, Serge.
For pests, we for the psyllid, when we discuss with people, we're saying like in Honduras, the problem is really spreading, but we really don't have the extent of the problem. And the psyllid is a pest by itself, but also a vector of disease, like for viruses as well, because it's moving around the bacterial disease. And one thing we would like here to see is how the psyllid is spreading, and what the disease also that is transmitting is also the situation on the ground. Because if we, in Honduras, our partners are talking a lot about this issue, but we don't know also in other parts of the world or in Africa how that is happening. Because we, when you start talking with people, you know that the problem is there, but the extent of the problem and how we can also address it. I know we have more potato diseases, but with the conversation, we will know if what's also happening in potato, including late blight, early blight, but if we have some other issues in potatoes and Solanaceae in general. And the coffee twig borer is joining again the coffee issues. When we started the Dream Team in Uganda, and so everybody was thinking coffee rust is really the most important thing. But on the ground, what everybody in Uganda was saying is the coffee twig borer seems to be one of the top priority, even before coffee rust. So is it something that is common in other African countries or in Central America and other coffee growing areas? We don't know. But in the first experience in Uganda, coffee twig borer is coming on the top even before coffee rust. So, and again, need to have more eyes on the ground to see if there's something that coming before that really spreading a lot. And the fall armyworm, that's everybody know a lot. And African armyworm, that's the situation like we discussed yesterday is we have a kind of outbreak in Kenya. And it's something also the similar situation is happening in Comoros, like a few weeks ago. We have the African armyworm a lot on the different farms. So it's something in the climate change that's making this pest to be more virulent or spreading a lot. Need to really understand why the situation this year for African armyworm is like that for Kenya and Comoros. If we will follow the news, but maybe in your different countries, you have the same situation. And for armyworm, like we know, we now need to leave the labs and really address the situation on the ground and see how we can efficiently manage this pest that's there for many years. And we know the pesticide application is not one of the best methods or the first method that we should use on the ground, and what we need to do to address efficiently the fall armyworm situation in the different parts. So if the parasitoid is the best method, yeah, maybe we need to really push hard on that. If we have some other situation that we can, other management situation we can use, yes, we need to push hard on that. But with the fall armyworms need to be addressed efficiently because it's long, the pest is there for a very long time, and you need to address it finally and to say, okay, that's what we should do for this pest yeah.
And I just add, remember, yesterday I had said after our meeting, I was going to go and have a meeting at FAO, which was part of the steering group for fall armyworm through their global action plan, which has been ongoing now for 2 years. It's headed by Rob Bertram, who is the chief scientist at USAID. And we were hearing in that meeting some recent reports. Well, firstly, I think it's in 76 countries now as an invasive pest. So it came from the Americas into West Africa, probably Togo, and then spread across all those countries. The economic cost, Kabi was talking about this yesterday, is I think they said it was something like $9.8 billion a year, just an extraordinary cost of just this one single insect. It is something that brings together groups. So it's an effective tool to bring together USAID and FAO. And when we're thinking about pests, we of course should think about the effect on calories for the farmers, effect on money for the farms and the society, but also effect on the community. You know, what will bring people together to work effectively, to build tools that could tackle fall armyworm, but maybe would be useful for other pests that maybe people are not focusing on. So that's an important message I just wanted to emphasize. Thanks, Serge.
And another psyllid, the Asian citrus psyllid, that causing also this greening of moving another bacteria. And here we know it's a pest, a common pest in the US, like in the citrus producing area, and how the situation in other countries, in other continents, and because the literature in developing countries is not really well elaborated for this pest. And yeah, if we can have also, like I say, more data about that will help to understand. If we don't have it also, that's good, but at least we say we have a negative result from this or this part of the world. At least we check and we know that the disease is not present. So it's to really have some more surveillance and say, okay, it's negative there, but it's positive in other places also to help manage it. Because some negative scouting also is really important to know that we check for the pests, we check for the disease, and the disease is not there, instead of waiting to have a big outbreak before coming to it. And the post-harvest system, we have alpha toxins for peanuts and for maize, and also the fruit flies in mango and some other fruits also. That's really, really good cash crop for fruits for many communities, even is, and that's helped the communities to have some extra income to invest, and that's helping for food security as well. And if this also post-harvest situation, we can address them for all other issues that for sure you're working on. But these two items, just put it there to bring the conversation for post-harvesting and see how we can efficiently talk about that in our groups. Yeah. And papaya mealybug and cassava mealybugs. The mealybugs are kind of for cassava mealybugs that were managed by using a parasitoid of many years ago. But when you go in the farms, you see that the pest is like coming back after disappearing for many years. So if we can bring back this capacity that we built, scientists built many years ago using the parasitoid back in the farm, that's going to be really important. And maybe use the same parasitoid, not the same parasitoid, but using this capacity to have the parasitoid for papaya mealybugs. You know, for the previous innovation lab, the papaya mealybugs are efficiently managed by using a parasitoid in India. So why we should use this capacity to address the papaya mealybugs also issues in different parts of the world, because we have the capacity from what the previous IPM lab built for papaya mealybugs and that we can use in the different countries. So we really hope we can also have this foundation that the IPM methods from the previous work to address these pests that are coming back or new in the different areas. Yeah. Thank you. I'm back to David.
Super, thank you. I'm gonna switch to my local PowerPoint here. So we've talked about the threats of the diseases, and the innovation lab, when it was, so there was a 2-year period of consultation among the global community that USAID put forward, and then the innovation lab the application was May 11th, 2021. And then it was started on the 1st of September 2020, the 30th of September 2021. And the 2-year period before the application went in, people were asked what they thought. And of course, they were really thinking of biotic stressors. It's the current and emerging threats to crops innovation lab. And I think that really we were not thinking so strongly of climate change. And USAID, when they were selecting us and asking for more details, the people who were evaluating the proposal really wanted to hear what we were thinking about in terms of climate change, because that's an enormous stressor, and perhaps it's the biggest stressor to crops. So we're certainly putting that into our innovation lab extensively. Okay, so the framing for this is this, this is in June, this is June 2021, so after the application went in and before the award was announced. And I think 2021, it's hard to remember which year we're in, so many things are happening and so many problematic things are happening, but 2021 really galvanized the global attention onto climate change. And it was because of what happened in North America. So this is Canada, where the temperatures broke records every day for 3 days in a row. So 46 degrees Celsius, 47 degrees Celsius, and 49 degrees. I mean, almost 50 degrees Celsius in Canada, in British Columbia, really extraordinary. And on the fourth day, after 3 record-breaking days, on the fourth day, the whole town burnt down. It burned down just because it got too hot. And this is just an extraordinary example, to my mind, of climate change, and the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present, as I mentioned yesterday. This Lincoln quote. I could have showed this picture, which is climate change in southern Madagascar. This is the one that got a lot of attention through the 41 million people were imperiled. And this David Beasley, the World Food Programme, put a lot of attention on this on social media. But in general, we're extremely good at ignoring these pictures. If it's a low-income country in the developing world, whether it's Africa, Central America, or Asia, we're very good at ignoring these pictures. What seems not to be ignored is the picture of Canada. And so in terms of dealing with climate change, there's a lot of pre-existing investments, and by far the best one is FuseNet. This is a USAID investment. I believe it was set up under the Obama administration. There was a large gathering of people in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and we're working very, very closely with FuseNet, and particularly the chief meteorologist there, Chris Funk, but a whole team of people, and they just do tremendous work whereby they put out alerts for people, and they show people what's happening based upon long-term series of data, as well as human interpretation of that. And at the moment, we're going through an incredibly bad crisis in East Africa. The Horn of Africa is going through its 4th back-to-back drought. So in Kenya, there's 2 seasons, the long rains and the short rains, the same thing in Ethiopia. And for the 4th season in a row, it's been below normal rains. So this is a really catastrophic occurrence that people have to deal with because all the moisture is leaving the ground. This is a map that Derek Moore on our team put together. We heard from Derek on day 1, and it's just showing the predictions that we would have from January to the early March, I think it is. And this is based upon CHIRPS data. So it's from FuseNet, and CHIRPS is looking at the satellite coverage of rain clouds, the top and the bottom of them, but also stations on the ground. And this is the prediction up until the 12th of March. And if you know East Africa, you know that at this time they're planting in the long rains, which is across the central and western part of Kenya, near the lake. There should be a lot of productivity going on here. And if I just run this again, you can see it goes from January when there was rain, which is the yellow and the blue parts, into just devastating redness. Now, something came out yesterday talking about how the rains are delayed, but it's going to be below average rains, and people are not prepared for this. They've lived in a landscape where they've understood that rains would come in March. They would also come back in October, and that's the way it's been for a long time. And now they're having to adapt to this new normal, which is that the droughts are longer, the rains are unpredictable, things are coming at different times, and this is a huge challenge for communities to deal with. Another challenge that we see in Africa are just increasing cyclones. So climate change causes droughts because the heat pulls the moisture from the soil. that moisture goes into the atmosphere, and then it comes back down as rain. But the heat also pulls the moisture from the sea. So one consequence of climate change is more cyclones, which is what they're called in the Indian Ocean, and they're called hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean. But same thing, huge amounts of moisture come up from the sea, and then they barrel across the landscape. This is, I think, the 14th of March, 2019. And a lot of us remember this. I think Annalise was in the field in Kenya, working with some farmers like Rosalind, we heard about on the first day, perhaps. And things collapsed. Margaret was another farmer, we remember. She planted 2 crops and they both failed. And because the moisture had been pulled out of the atmosphere up here in Kenya because of this huge cyclone coming into the land. So this is the largest cyclone ever to hit Africa until 2 weeks later. This was the 14th of March, I think the 25th of April. So maybe a month later, this was Idea. So one was Matthew and Idea. This was a larger cyclone that came in right on the back of the other one. So these are the 2 ones, Idea and Kenneth, Kenneth and Idea, and these were huge cyclones. One was 700 kilometers wide, the other one was 800 kilometers wide. And just extraordinary, unprecedented. I mean, this is why I think that Lincoln quote becomes so important, the stormy present. We're completely unused to this sort of thing. We just, there's no conception of which we've ever dealt with such large events. And of course, this is catastrophic on the ground level, causing massive floodings. But as I mentioned, it has a cross-continental effect. It pulled the moisture out of the atmosphere in Uganda and Kenya, causing failures of the crops in 2019. And cyclones are not just affecting the land directly by destroying crops or reducing the moisture, they're also causing pest problems. So the iconic example of this is the Locust Crisis of 2020, which PlantVillage was very much involved with the United Nations. Our dream team in Kenya, remember this, Melody and Jeptu led our efforts in the northern counties with our northern teams. Just phenomenal work by Melody and Dr. Chalal and the whole team, Fofin and so on. Really excellent work. But it was caused by climate change. It's a symptom of climate change, because what happened in this happened in 29th of December 2019. The locust came from the Ogaden region of Ethiopia across the border into Kenya. Kenya had not had locusts for 75 years. Throughout January, February, March 2020, it expanded and spread. March 11th was the declaration of the global pandemic by the World Health Organization. And but it didn't start in that day. It started 2 years beforehand. This is 2018 October, and then this is May 2018, and these 2 cyclones came into what's called a hidden quarter in the Arabian Peninsula, which is just an enormous area of nothing. That's why it's called a hidden quarter, and it's just sand. And so it dropped huge amounts of rain into this desert area. The seeds in the ground germinated. We had grasses. The solitary insects, which are the grasshoppers, started to build up in numbers. These solitary grasshoppers bump into one another, and what happens with locusts, they go through what's called a phase polyphenism. So they change the swarming stage, and then they just swarmed out, and then they moved over to Iran and to Pakistan. They moved across to the Horn of Africa, and then they were running out of food. And then another cyclone came in, and then brought more water, more vegetation, and kept the whole thing going. Same thing here in Oman. And so we're having these pest problems being driven by the weather. We could also talk about this in terms of rust diseases, which are expecting to follow the same pattern. So climate change is a force multiplier for pests. We talked about Africa. So this is the Himalaya. So Nepal is one of our countries. The Himalayas are of course higher. We are 1.1 degrees, 1.2 degrees above historical norms, but in the Himalayas, we're probably about 2.1 degrees above historical norms because the effect of climate change is higher in high elevations or high latitudes, like the Arctic, but also high elevations like in Nepal and the Himalayas. So, devastating loss of glaciers. And what's going to happen to all this water? It's going to cause flooding downstream among all of these farmers and cause these problems, and then create more pest problems as well. In Central America, particularly in the dry corridor, Honduras, we're seeing drying up of the central corridor, drying up. It's the wind patterns are changing, the moisture is being lost from the atmosphere, from the ground into the atmosphere, and then we're seeing huge migrations. So we're now recognizing that a lot of these migrations north to the southern border of the United States are driven by climate change as farms fail. Hundreds of thousands of people. In the case of Guatemala, it was about Honduras, it was about 300,000 people moving northwards. And a lot of this is driven by the landscape just not supporting livelihoods. So this is an insight into our climate change component. And I think, from that broad overview, we can all see just how clearly and important that is. Okay, so Serge and I have spoken, but maybe we're going to open it to a general conversation, but maybe just for those people on the front lines, we could actually have a word. I didn't actually prepare any of this, but maybe if I could call upon one of the Dream Team members, if somebody would like to talk about the current crisis you're seeing. Just remind everybody here, the Dream Team in Kenya are working across 10 counties. They're planting the maize in those counties. So maybe one of those Dream Team members would like to talk about what has been unexpected and how are the farmers responding to this unexpected changes that we're seeing because of climate change.
Sure. My name is Dan Jabit. I'm from Narok County. Generally, I guess here we have a very serious crisis that has just emerged that is threatening to cause food starvation among farmers, both pastoralists and crop, because we have an infection in African armyworm, which has been here now for 3 weeks, and it has caused more than just damage. Just to draw a perspective of what is happening here is 3 weeks ago, I guess on the 28th of February, we first encountered the first bunch of armyworms, and probably most people didn't expect that it will be this serious and problematic. But as we speak right now, they have covered thousands of land and acres. The damage is not just dangerous of too much, but it is actually demoralizing among farmers. For example, those who have Napier grass and maize, because as David said, most of the farmers are now planting. And I have to say that for Narok, it's unfortunate because we received early rains in February, which gave farmers hope, and most of them have planted their maize. So the early rains that we received in February, which was a relief because we were at a verge of breaking due to the drought, has now turned into a problem. It's no longer happiness here, it's sadness, because they have come with lots of these African armyworms. And the problem is no one has the solution, because one, they attack in large numbers. Actually, you can scoop these armyworms with your hands and they're just all over the place. And within a span of 1 hour, if it's an acre of grass or maize, you could completely have zero maize in that farm, or you could have zero grasses. The place will turn into dust. If winds blow, you literally can get the dust blowing up. And this is land that was totally covered with grass. And it's not only in specific regions, but almost the entire county. And it's causing a lot of problems right from the livestock farmers to the crop farmers. Most of even the livestock farmers are now complaining because they're losing their animals due to these worms. For example, I was having a case yesterday where some animals fed on the African armyworm. Now, because they're all over, they're part of the grass actually, and it's causing bloating. These animals are constipating, and within 3 or 2 hours, you can get your cow dying, and people do not have a control and how to do it. So I reached out to David, and today I've been collecting some of the armyworms, and I've actually placed them in moist tins because he told me to collect some of the dead ones and be able to study and see how this correlate. So we're hoping that the problem will get a solution, but currently as we speak, it's really a danger, but puts most of the farmers here at a place that they do not understand and did not know how to do it and how to go about it. For example, yesterday we reported a case to the county government, the Ministry of Agriculture, and up to this minute, we did not have any cumulative response to it, but they are hoping that they probably will be able to provide some help, including chemical control of the worms. I must also note that the challenge is they are migratory. So most of the time, when they're done with one phase, in a few minutes later, you'll find them in another place. So you can't be able to fully control. And the hardest part is if it's like paddocking. If they leave the first paddock and go to the next, when the vegetation starts growing again, they come back. So they do not have a specific pattern that they're following when it comes to their migration, but they're just going to the places that have a lot of green vegetation, grasses and maize. And I can say for sure that the extent of damage is very, very high, given that a good number, for I guess around 50% of the farmers here already planted their maize, and the maize is around a month old, well grown because of the February rains, and they were very much prospective about some good harvest, which is now at jeopardy because of the attack by the African armyworm. So that is one of the emerging crises that we are facing here in Narok County, and it's really, really a huge problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for that very detailed perspective. Really excellent. Thank you so much. Mark, you had something you wanted to say?
Oh.
Thank you. I'm Mark from Kenya, working with the PlantVillage. Actually, I work with them in Homa Bay Sub-County, West Kasipul Ward. The challenge is the same. For now, most of our farmers are 2 weeks, 3 weeks into planting, and their crops are grown. And what is surprising us this time is that most of their crops have been attacked. And according to the scale that we were using as a standard, we found that most of them at the 6, 7 levels. So that is very alarming. So that one is also an issue. Though there's no any, let's say there's not that any specific solution, we found that some farmers are trying to engage into some particular patterns of control. Like we find that some of them mixing water with some paper and some ash and inserting them in the funnels of the young maize plant so that they can suffocate those particular worms. But at the end of the day, we know that these worms are also migratory. So we are just hoping that it will give them a short-term relief if we are still waiting at least to come up with something that will give us a long-term. Also, for the presentation that was early on, thank you for the presentation. I would like just to add something about the climate change. What the climate change is just doing basically is just helping these things to, they're just improving the speed of their life cycle. For instance, from the egg, pupa, larva, and adult stage. When this heat is too much, we find that they tend to reproduce quickly. So their populations are gaining cover, are gaining growth as compared to what they have to feed on. And at the same time, what they depend on as food, the same things that these farmers also depend on for their lives, for their living. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Brenda.
Thank you so much. So on my end, I'll talk about the farmers who already have inputs, but they're not sure when to plant. Some cases so far is cases of Homa Bay and Siaya. So like some fields, 22 fields are planted and some of them are drying up. So that is a challenge to the farmer because they're not even sure when to plant and they are confused. So that is climate change and it's affecting them and they're even confused here.
I think that's a really important point because you're trying to run this very large USAID project, and we have a well-designed experiment that you're running, and Winkit will talk next. But it's been affected by climate change, and it's preventing us to be effectively conducting the research. So we want to do research for development, but we're having all of these problems of climate change, which are making it hard. So that's a very important point, Brenda. Thank you so much. Winkit? I think she.
Okay, thank you, David. I wanted to say the point of the rainfall. We are not receiving rainfall on the counties we have distributed the inputs, and in so that the farmers expected to plant in the beginning of the month, that is March, but they have not been able to plant due to the delays in the rainfall. And also you find that the farmers who planted earlier, as from February, you find that their crops are drying up because we are not receiving the amount of rainfall as we were receiving back in those years. That is my point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much indeed, Winkit. That's excellent. And then Millsort, I think you wanted to say something.
Thanks, David, and thanks for the sessions we've had. What I wanted to say is clearly what Brenda and Winkit has they've mentioned. As a Dream Team member and also a farmer within Wasingishu County, the farmers have this mentality of when they've been growing their farms, when they've been preparing the farms, and when they're starting the planting. So you find that what they plant most is maize, and at this point, the climate has really changed to a point whereby when they were expecting to have the planting season, it's dry. Some of them even plant acres like 100 and so, and eventually lose a lot because now when the maize just germinate, it dries up. So you find there's big losses. They no longer know when to plant. They no longer know when should I like do this, and it has also affected the harvest because when they're expecting the dry season and they are supposed to now harvest, there's a lot of rain, and it's now affecting their produce, whereby they rot. All of them just start rotting in the farms and all that. So it's something that we need to really look up and see how we can help them, how we can show them how the patterns have changed and all that. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you so much indeed for that. And just generally from the Dream Team in Kenya, could you speak to, you've talked very well about, Daniel talked about multiple problems working together, and then Brenda and Winkit talked about the issues of trying to run an experiment, and Milson sort of said the same thing. So that's affecting us as scientists being able to do something. But what is the effect on the farmers? Because they're imagining the ability to do one thing, plant maize in the long rains, but how difficult is it to get to change their behavior to, for example, have drought tolerant crops or irrigation or climate smart agriculture, all the stuff that looks great in a book and a paper, but how hard is it to get farmers to adopt that?
Okay, maybe if I point out on that, most of the farmers have not, they're like on the shock stage whereby you were used for the past 40 years or 20 years, you're used to planting maize and wheat in such a time, like maybe prepare by March, plant by this day or time. But now they're in this kind of, they're now at the shock season whereby you're planting, they're germinating, they dry out. So most of them have not, I would not say they've not moved to other crops. They are now like, what would the government do? What they're now crying out. So yeah, I think most of them are just on that, what can we do stage.
Super, thank you. Maybe I'll go to Shushmita, so we have a perspective from Nepal.
Hello everyone, I'm Shushmita Sharma, Dream Team Nepal. Here in Nepal, during the onset of winter, that was in 2021, about August, September, there was heavy rainfall all over the Nepal. At that time, we were not expecting rainfall at that time, as that was not the rainy season. In Tarai region, at that time, there was the time just to harvest rainy season rice. Farmers were ready to harvest the rice, but at that time, there was heavy rain for 4 to 5 days that caused full submergence of field. Due to that, there was a huge loss of rice in many places. That was surprising that the rice which was in the field unharvested, that got germinated in the field within the plant. For that, in that time, there was very loss, and many agricultural students that did volunteer help farmer in harvesting.
Thank you so much indeed. So we've now heard from 5 young people across 4 counties in Kenya, and Millsort has also been working directly in Uganda, and we've heard from Nepal. I'd like then to maybe open it up to the broader groups. I mean, it's really one of the things that we think is so important, and John Chalal said this in our internal discussions yesterday after the meeting, which is that the people who know the problems are the people spending 5 days a week with farmers, and that's the young people on this call. It's a pretty impressive situation to hear these details, and I've spent a lot of time at FAO, both as a fellow, but also yesterday in the meeting. And I have to confess, one of my frustrations is that a lot of people speaking about international development don't understand fully the technical details. And we want to make sure that people like Christy Sprague or Marisol Quintanilla, who are domain experts, or Bruce McFerrin with his background in insects, or I can see our Dean here, Dean Rausch is on. He's also very strong expertise in insects and insecticides. We want to make sure that when we're having conversations, it's driven by the technical details. I think that's so critical. So it was just wonderful to hear everything you said and the precise information you shared. I also know Angela Records is super geeky about plant pathology and had written a book, edited a book with Jean Ristiano on plant pathology. So great interest in coffee rust, which I mentioned yesterday. So excellent. So who else wants to kind of raise a point and discuss some of the threats that we've talked about today?
Hi everyone, and for me, I wanted to add on that issue of the farmers adapting those technologies that are being brought to them by people like us or organizations like PlantVillage. And I was looking at a scenario like with where I come from. We have had a trend whereby our grandfathers, not the fathers, the grandfathers. I come from a tea growing zone or area in central Kenya. So the kind of farming that they do is small scale tea farming. And they supplement the money that they get from this by doing commercial maize farming in the Rift Valley counties or the Nyandarua County in central Kenya also. And one thing that I've noticed, or still being raised as a complaint by our own fathers now, is that when the grandfathers were doing it, they used to come back with good money whenever they went to do the commercial maize farming for the supplementing of the money. But right now, they are trying the same, but they are not earning as much as the grandfathers would earn. And one of the major things that has caused this, like right now, we usually used to expect trains every 15th of March all the way to 21st that week. That's the week that the first season rains used to start. But right now they are still waiting, and there are no rains in the Rift Valley, the Nyandarua County, and so that means at the end of the season, maybe in December when they'll be harvesting, they'll still get little, and the complaints will still continue. And one thing that when Kenya gained independence, maybe I wasn't there, but I read. The president then, who was Kenyatta, the father to the one who is ruling right now, one of the goals he had was to end the diseases, poverty, and ignorance. In Swahili, it sounds very, very well. Like ignorance is called ujinga in Swahili, which is way worse than in English. So one thing that Kenyans or in Africa at large haven't yet removed from themselves is the ignorance. And one way of fighting ignorance, or the only way maybe, is through education, but we haven't achieved this yet. So, and one form of education is what we are doing as Dream Team, teaching the farmers and on the upcoming trends and all the technologies that they need to adopt so that they can change their ways. And these are the things that we should continue to do. Just speaking to these farmers, the likes of our parents, to stop doing just the maize farming in those very fertile counties, and introduce new technologies like irrigation in those areas. And they would still maybe harvest even thrice a year if they do 3 months cropping. Yeah, that's my thought.
Thank you so much, James. And I would stress that it's education towards the farmers, but it's also education towards the global community. I think that the point about FAO and leadership across, well, the CGIR leadership, FAO leadership, and perhaps also to some extent, well, also USAID and Congress and the World Food Program and IFAD. You know, we have a lot of people who are very powerful in these positions, and they're doing good work, but they don't spend a lot of time in the fields. And it's really important that as you put education towards the farmers, you're also putting education towards those leaders. I think that's a really, really important point. And those leaders are open to it. So we had a very strong relationship with Ambassador Kip Tom, former US ambassador to the Rome-based agencies. And he was very interested in hearing constantly from us. And we hope to have a similar strong relationship with Ambassador McCain, the new ambassador there. It's our job to kind of relay that information from the field. And I think the young people on this call, whether they're from Nepal or from Kenya or Uganda or Honduras, this is a critically important role that you're going to play in education. El Fatih? Yeah, please go ahead, Al Fatih. I think you're maybe muted. Perhaps I can't see your lips.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Beatrice.
Oh, sorry.
I'm joining, yes, I'm Beatrice. Sorry about. I registered for this event, but unfortunately, I didn't get the link, the Zoom link. So I follow you via YouTube, and I saw El Fatih because he's one of the person I've been collaborating with. So I asked him to share the link with me. So he did, and okay, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Beatrice. I've worked before at ECP as a PhD student where we were looking at, I was looking mostly at bees, honey bees. And today I'm working with the Agricultural Research Organization, still on bees, like trying to look at their pests and diseases. So I've noticed that in the FIT and the Future Innovation Lab, we are mostly looking at, we are talking about the pests and the diseases that affect our plants in Africa. And we always forget about the section of the bees, like incorporating the bees in our agricultural systems. And this is the reason why I've been engaged in this field with Christina Gosinger to see how we can build this area in Africa, because we developed a project before. I reached out to her to try and see how we can incorporate the bees in our farming system to help the farmers, because already the research I've conducted so far at ECP, where it is something that is going on now, and I'm working with Carolina University, Rachel Bennett, and also John Perk at the USDA in Gainesville, and we have good results on how bees can help promote, or how they are improving the production of the yellow bell pepper plants. So I'm wondering, within the scope of the Feed the Nature Innovation Lab, is it something that you feel is important to incorporate? Because one of the speakers just spoke about changing the mindset of the farmers, like bringing new system on board to improve their production system. And at the same time, the farming system, they use a lot of insecticide. And also the way they are farming, they cut all the grasses, the weeds, and we know some of the weeds are very important for the bees, and so for the pollination of their crops. So how can we bring all of that on board to help the farmers? Do you think this is something that we can engage in?
Yeah. So firstly, it's wonderful to have you on the call, Beatrice. Thank you so much for joining. And of course, Christina is wonderful and is a colleague of mine at Penn State. And the Pollinator Institute here is excellent, and they've done very good work with ICIPE. The answer is absolutely yes. This is critically important to food production. The decline in pollinators is a current threat to crops, and there's a lot of reasons for that decline. We've seen it across Europe and North America. We don't know the situation extensively in Africa. Apis mellifera is, of course, highly abundant across the continent, and there's also a lot of other pollinators. Yesterday, we spoke about our RFA process. So you could very simply just write to us. We'll put the link down in the chat, but you could just simply write to us a couple of paragraphs from the previous application, and then we could work with you to developing a proposal, and then we'll work with our board about the suitability of that proposal. But this is exactly the kind of thing we want to do. A researcher like yourself with expertise reaching out and saying, hey, what about the pollinators? So that's the kind of thing we want to fund. So thank you so much for joining and raising that point. Thank you.
Okay.
Matthew?
Yes, I'm Matthew, working as Dream Team, part of the Dream Team in Kenya. I wanted to just comment on the nematodes and the bacterial wheels that Serge was talking of. And also I want to appreciate CIP on what they are doing about late blight genotyping, because that has been a challenge to our farmers, because there's a scam that these agrochemical companies, they usually go around telling our farmers that this is the best fungicide to use in controlling late blight. And now when those guys, our farmers go and buy those chemicals, fungicides that they come and use, spray in their fields, you can find still that they don't control the late blight. So that has been a challenge, because I've been asking myself a question like, if this is said to be the best fungicide, and now you come and spray to your in your farm, potato farm, but you find yourself, the field still infected by the blight. So I think that will be a solution, so that we can know what is happening with our potatoes, what is developing, what is the genotype, developing, what is it making it resistant to the fungicide that we have in Kenya. Yeah, so I think it will be nice if we can get something, the best result from it, so that we can come back to our farmers and tell them this is what is happening. Then of course they develop a good fungicide that they will use, so that they can evade this blight thing. Also, talking about the nematodes and the bacterial wilt, I live I come from a county in El Marakwet, where many farmers are planting potatoes. Yes, and bacterial wilt has been a challenge. But now, after attending a training in Isipe about nematodes, now I've come back, I've seen the results that, it was not only the bacterial wilt, it's also nematodes. Yeah, so I think what we should focus now in maybe for potato farmers first is training them on how to identify if the field is infested by nematodes or bacterial, so that they cannot be going around and maybe being conned by those same agrochemical companies, where they're telling them that we have something that will make your potato farm not have bacterial wilt. Yes, so that is a challenge now in potato farming counties in Kenya. And yeah, with that knowledge that we have by now, and of course the knowledge that we'll disseminate to our farmers, they will get to know what is the problem that we have, how to control them, and of course evade the conmanship of the people from agrochemical companies, and of course those people that they want to use them to maybe to gain something good, or they buy the chemicals. Yeah.
Thank you. That's another excellent point, and I think we're going to obviously connect you to Marisol, or a domain expert on nematodes in MSU, and continue that. It's a very, very good point. Ditya, another voice.
I'm happy to do that. Send me an email and coordinate with me some dates.
Yeah, let's do that on Basecamp, Matthew. Just reach out to or we'll put you in the channel. Another voice from Nepal, Ditya. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. I'm Ditya. I work at ID in Nepal. And the point I wanted to raise on current and emerging threat is one of the biotic stressor that is emerging as an important threat is weeds in Nepal. Talking about the country in general, we are investing lots of available resources in pest disease control, and very limited resources are being used for weed management and its awareness among farmers. And few days earlier, when I visited Western Nepal, Surkhet, farmers were experiencing extreme problem of billy goat weeds in wheat cultivated areas. And when I asked them about any technical help being provided for it, they said there was no trainings or information on weed management on local level. So the threat is that they will be going for chemical herbicides at this point. So I heard earlier in the presentation that there was bioherbicide that was being used for one of the witch weeds. So I wanted to know a little bit more on that aspect.
Just put the paper in the chat for you. So what it's come from David Sands at Montana State. I was actually in the background writing to our dean, who was on the call and has left, but he emailed about this. He had worked on something in Australia on a weed. So there's a variety of fungi which are in the soil, which are able to produce these chemicals. And what David Sands at Montana State did was to select them through classical breeding for the overproduction of certain amino acids like tyrosine and alanine, and this would affect the germination and the growth of the weed. And then they take this I think it's Fusarium oxysporum. They take this and then they grow it up in a local setting with rice, and then they're able to then put that into the ground, and then the rice is a medium by which the fungus can grow, and then they can control the weed. Very, very effective. It's very similar to parasitoids. It's a release of something, and the benefit is that this fungus stays in the soil. So after applying it maybe once or twice, and this is the research we're going to do, but after applying it, it may stay permanently in the soil. Serge talked about some of these diseases of banana. Tropical race 4 is an example of that. It's also fusarium, and in this case, it's very hard to grow bananas in some places because of the pathogen in the soil. But we can use that long-term durability to our advantage in controlling weeds. So really excellent work. Montana State has been really phenomenal. I believe they had a USA Development Innovation Venture. So certainly, and that's the really excellent part of the platform. So you came to this talk, you listened, you heard about something that's relevant in Nepal, and now we can connect you to the dream team in Kenya using it, Montana State developing it, and the private company in Kenya, Toothpick, who are producing this. So that's where platforms are really, really effective and accelerate things. Thank you so much indeed for that, Ditya. Bruce.
Thanks, David. Appreciate the last couple of days here. It's really been very, very informative. For all of my friends that I've never met, I worked on fruit flies in Africa and in Latin America throughout much of my research career. And our laboratory actually developed the first diagnostic tools to look at the movement of those flies, which obviously affects export crops very much, but also has proven in different parts of the world to have some importance for local farmers as well. And we've also worked a lot over in history, and my former students continue to work on understanding complexes of species so that you can, they don't all respond to the same management tools. So that's the little bit of history. David and colleagues, the last 3 days have really, I think, magnified the power of what this program can deliver. The connection, and especially the voices this morning from our colleagues around the world about what they're doing locally and the challenges they're facing are really critical. And there are many, as we know, immediate needs, and we have tools that could be developed. The discussion of the biopesticide was a perfect example. David, I'm just putting a marker in, and it's not something you haven't thought of, but the way you've structured the RFA and grant process makes a lot of sense for the kinds of things we're talking about today. The tools that we're going to need for some of the emerging pests and the tools we're going to need for abiotic stress really fall into the work that you and your team have done, David, over the years in developing what became PlantVillage and what became the backbone for this. I think maybe a really important outcome of this week's conversations is to mobilize a group of interested research scientists informed by all of these on-the-ground situations to approach other donors to leverage really effectively the process that this innovation lab is taking. Many of the things that we are going to need in 2, 3, 10 years are in fact things we haven't invented yet. And they're going to take longer periods of time and more investment than we're able to make with the mechanisms that you put forward. But it can't succeed without the kind of on-the-ground connection that we've highlighted today with all of these partners. These are the real needs. And actually, the folks working with smallholders, I was an extension agent here in Ohio, in the US for several years before I got my PhD. I've lived that life and know what it means to actually connect with people doing the work. That has to be a fundamental part of convincing others, other donors that they need to put their money on the line for longer periods of time to leverage what is going to be succeeded. So we can talk more about that as appropriate offline and afterwards, but just wanted to put that marker out this morning, David.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that. And that's certainly one of the things we're going to do. So this is just a kickoff meeting, but Angela at USAID, Angela Records, has suggested we have a donor meeting. I don't know if you want to add a comment there, Angela, but I think it's a very good idea that we would reach out to the donors and get them into the room on Zoom and then have this conversation. Yeah, so great. So we can certainly do that, and also it'll save the donors money. So we've already talked to Danida and NORAD in Scandinavia, and they're doing similar projects, so we can save money for the donors and have a greater import. Your point about we need tools that are not yet invented is very, very critical. I think this is where the point of care diagnostics from people like Jean Rustiano, Dave Hodson, Diane Saunders, and many, many others is also so critical. Excellent, thank you. Kelvin.
Yeah, thank you, David. So my point was to talk about the soils. I've been interacting with farmers, and what I realized that they tend to increase the input so that they can also expect more output. So on in economics, we talk of the input-output relationship. So farmers have been increasing the use of fertilizer, that's inorganic fertilizer, and we talk of with high potassium. And in return, at some point, they used to experience increase in output. But at this time, as we speak now, the output have gone so low. So they never knew like the soils will become somehow depleted because of high acidity. So now they are now talking of when they increase the input, there's no output totally that they are going to get. So, and I think this have come in, and we are very happy because we have changed the system. We are now going to use the biochar, and I think we are going to expect some better results because from the germinations that we have seen and how the maize is coming from the ground, I think we are going to have some better results. And also, the point of using the biochar, we have realized that farmers are doing dry planting, and they expect the germination was that we didn't have any problems with the maize germinating, because after 1 week we saw some maize shooting up when the rains was now sufficient to enable germination, and that was very interesting. But those farmers who planted with inorganic fertilizers, I think they had a problem. They lost. We only had like 20% of the maize germinating. So that's very interesting observation, and we'll urge farmers to shift that, because we are going to amend the soil. At the same time, the biochar is going to conserve some moisture. And again, we are not going to lose more seedlings, especially when you plant when there's no enough water in the soils, because inorganic fertilizer tend to burn the seeds before they germinate if there's no enough moisture. So that was a very interesting observation, and thanks to David for making us do this. Thank you.
Well, I was extremely interested in the burning effect. I thought that was just such an interesting observation that really scores home the point that Angela is always reminding us of for the research for development, but it wasn't so obvious. I mean, it's really an important issue. So thanks so much for repeating that. Liverson.
Thank you, David. So it's Liverson from Kilifi County. My area is highly water stressed, and pointing on the impact of the climate change to the farmers, it has been seen and it's already on the ground. This is because the rains are unpredictable, the rains are not enough, and they come in short periods. Like the last 2 seasons, we haven't experienced, the last 2 years, or most of 3 years, we haven't experienced the 2 seasons. The rains maybe come from May, for May or April, May, June, but for the December rains, there are no rains. Or when they come in December, they come in large, huge amounts, So they triggered the farmers to go into the farms and go and plant their seeds. But there are large amounts, but in a short period of time. So what I have observed is that some farmers have adapted. Some have water pans. In such a scenario where there's huge amounts of rains, but they are in short period of time. When the maize, maybe they are in the third stage of growing and the rains have disappeared, I've seen some of the farmers using that water to irrigate the farms. And that is a score for me, because some farmers have said, oh, I heard from, not I heard, but I have seen maybe John's farm, it's doing great. Why? When the farmers go and visit that place, that farmer is doing irrigation and he started with a rain-fed. But those who majorly depended on the rain-fed, they are totally losing. So this triggers me to the point of how can we make these farmers adapt the new technologies that we're talking about. Cliffy County, as I've said, it's a water-stressed area. So how can we conserve the moisture? And our IPM project, digging side bits is our major goal. So when we started digging these side bits, so last week, we visited one of the farmer. So the farmer came and told us, so do you mean digging these kind of holes will make me have bumper harvest? We told him, yeah, yes. Surprisingly, he told us that if it's going to work, then I'm going to adapt it. But it's going to fail, I'm not going to adapt it. So for us, that is a score. It's going to work. So when it's going to work, the rest of the fields or the rest of the farmers around those community, they're going to adapt it. So for farmers to adapt these new technologies, I think we have to do massive experimental designs, experimental plots to every farmers, then have maybe a meeting to them on those farms, teach them this is how things are being done. So I think, or I'm sure they're going to adopt those methods. Another thing that I have observed with the farmers is, I don't know if I call it laziness or I call it, I don't know how I can call it. Or they are continually using their own cultural means. Like a farmer has harvested maybe like maybe an acre of maybe cowpea or maize. But you find this farmer, instead of turning that residue into maybe an organic matter, what he or she does, maybe he pays a pastoralist from another area so that that pastoralist can come and feed on that field. So when that field is cleared, all of it, the farmer is proud, my field is clear. So when the rains come, just go and dig the hole, put the seeds. What he or she doesn't know is that the soil fertility is going low. That's what Nyonges is saying. We're increasing the soil acidity. He goes to the market, buy the chemical fertilizers, put in the soil. So instead of buffering or instead of improving the soil fertility, he or she is increasing the soil pH. So at the long run, we find that there will be increase in inputs to be used in the farm, but there is decrease in output that is obtained. So we have a negative score to the farmers. Thank you.
That's really excellent. I just wanted to let everybody know we live in a fundamentally different world. So while Liverson was talking, I was asking for some pictures. So here's some pictures from Vincent, who's in Bomet, and so in Bomet County, which one of the first counties we're planting, this would be expecting a lot of rain and how much, and it's drying up. The fields are dry and it's failing. And we can see that it's already starting to wilt. Now, at the same time as we have that, I can show you, based upon 40 years of data from FuseNet, a USAID product, and I can show you Beaumont County and the timing of planting let's say people were going to plant today in different counties. So Bomet, how much rain would we expect for phase 1? 170 millimeters of rain for phase 2. But the really important part is phase 3. And so you can see the yellow line, which is basically do not go below this line or you're going to have a failure. And so the yellow line is about 126, and Bomet is about 168 or exactly. So it's too little rain. And we know this because of 40 years of data and domain experts like Chris Funk and all of the huge investments. And so when you go past this, farmers are planting, but they're going to fail. So the science is there, the real-time communication to go from that picture to, you can see all the chats we have, to go to the picture that we have in Kalifi that Liverson was talking about, and the adoption of this technology, these Zypits from Burkina Faso, which is a Hellian country, but it holds the water in the soil. And then we put in the biochar, which holds the water. Now we can have 2 crops. And then we also talked about the irrigation, the pan that he talked about just now. And so all of this is a real-time communication system. We bring data, we bring people who just spent today. I mean, time is it now in Kenya? It's 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Maybe Liverson was in the field today with those farmers. And now I can show Angela at USAID or the CGIR partners like Dave Hudson and Jan. I can show that to them as well as everybody else. So the world has shifted on its axis. We're in a different period, and we can take advantage of this, and we can we can rise to the occasion that Administrator Power talked about in my quotation on Monday. Thank you, Meshach. Yeah, go ahead.
On the side, I'm going to have a mention on threats of weeds to crops or to our environment. So we have been talking about how these weeds, for example, maybe strider, how it threat to maize plant also. So there's this weed that is upcoming, of which it might look to be so distant as part of other weeds, and this is by the name Doda or Cascuta japonica. This is another weed that is looking as a future threat, which we need to also have some overview or have some solution or some kind of advice that we can give to our farmers. I'm saying this because I've been going through the farms, meeting farmers on a daily basis, and they will ask you, there's this kind of weed that is having, it's yellow in color, and it looks to be continuous, and it climbs on trees, it climbs on our fences, it can climb on our crops, and it sucks water, or it makes our crops to dry out. So it's also a major concern. So it's like in the near future or in the future, we're going to have a problem of biodiversity. Since we depend on biodiversity to have the process of nature ecosystem, agricultural processes to happen. On the same, we can talk about this thing called cover crops. If we are going to have this weed covering our grounds, we're going to lose these crops. And then we are at the risk or at the feature of having direct sunlight to the ground. Then back, we can have transpiration or evapotranspiration. And then these are threat. So I think under this weed is a very nice contributor to food insecurity in the near future. At the same time, this weed is coming because of climate change. Or to David, maybe I can ask a question now. Since this Doda weed is a significant future threat, how can we go about it? Or how can we comment about it since it's a parasitic weed? Back to you.
We've been talking about Dodder between Christy Sprague at Michigan State and Oscar Koch at University of Nairobi, and he's been looking at the expansion of Dodder and really repeating what you've said, which is We don't know how widespread it is. In fact, for many of these problems, we don't have good controls, just mechanical control, which is the main thing. But the kind of work we've talked about for Striga of using a bioherbicide, that could be something that's also beneficial. Much of the beneficial work that one can do is called classical biocontrol, where you could go to the center of origin of the pest and find something that kills it. We've seen this with rust diseases and a hyperparasite. So I think one of the things that Oscar Koch at Nairobi is going to do is put in an application for one of our grants. I think he's going to maybe work with Christy, try to build out a program of research for tackling, for firstly, maybe doing surveillance on weeds. We just don't have enough surveillance on weeds. And then secondly, looking for partnerships in order to do this effective control, the sort of stuff that we saw coming out of Montana State through David Sands and others. And that's the benefit of the land grants. You know, they're just full of people doing great research, and we can use that research. But then you combine the land grants with the experience on the ground and the ability to do experiments in real time. Yeah, it's very, very powerful. Great. Maybe I'll go to Romaric next from Burkina Faso.
Thank you, David. I'm Romaric Tienrebego. I will speak to English and Sergio will translate it for me. Donc, ici, nous avons les effets du changement climatique, en fait, qui sévissent au Burkina Faso. Et les producteurs sont confrontés à beaucoup de problèmes dus au changement climatique. Et l'exemple, c'est cette année, par exemple, où nous risquons de traverser une période de famine parce que les productions n'ont pas été très bonnes, du fait qu'il y a eu des poches de sécheresse. Et tout ça a été dû au fait que les producteurs ne maîtrisent pas en fait la météorologie. Donc, à travers l'application PlantVillage, nous voulons vraiment aider les producteurs en leur fournissant ces données météorologiques-là. Voilà, pour qu'ils puissent en fait prévoir, savoir quand est-ce qu'ils doivent s'aimer, s'il y a des poches de sécheresse qui sont en vue, quelles sont les stratégies qu'ils peuvent en fait adopter pour pouvoir traverser ces poches de sécheresse-là, notamment en développant des systèmes de rétention d'eau pour enfin traverser ces périodes-là. À cela aussi s'ajoute la dégradation des sols. Les sols sont beaucoup dégradés au Burkina Faso. Tout ça, c'est dû au fait que le sol se chauffe. Les producteurs ne pratiquent pas certaines techniques comme la couverture des sols pendant les périodes sèches. Et donc, en ce sens-là, il faut encore en fait redynamiser nos sols en insistant sur le compostage, en formant les producteurs à adopter en fait le compostage pour en fait enrichir ces sols-là et puis mieux les protéger. Voilà. Et également, l'autre point, c'est l'agroforesterie où peu de producteurs au Burkina Faso connaissent l'importance de l'agroforesterie pour les cultures. Et donc, c'est cette demande-là en fait que nos producteurs au Burkina ont, notamment maîtriser la pluviométrie et avoir des techniques de rétention d'eau, se faire former pour les techniques de compostage. Serge, peux traduire pour moi?
I will summarize what Romaric said in English. The problem that presently the farmers are facing for this year before the raining season is the problem of famine, because last year the production wasn't high, and also because of this situation, they won't have enough food to go through this dry season until the harvest of next year, that the raining season will be starting at around June. So what farmers really looking for is to how to really handle the planting periods. So that means they want to use the PlantVillage system to help farmers to find the right time to plant, and also the different weather forecasting to help them to know when they will have some drought period, and being able, knowing the drought period, being able to kind of water the plants if we have a long drought time. And for that is, if they want to water the plants during the long drought period, this means that they should have some water collection system not far from the farms. So it's also helping farmers to see if they can develop some water collection systems and water the farms when we have some drought or long drought periods. And also that's some promoting some good farming practices like mulching to reduce the soil evaporations. And also because we have, the country have a lot of issues in soil quality. So the dream team there is really trying to push hard on composting. So using the short cycle composting system to help farmers to kind of improve the soil quality in the different areas. And sure, I'm forgetting something. And Romaric, what's your last point, please?
Agroforestry.
Agroforestry, yeah. For the agroforestry also, this year they are working with farmers to do some agroforestry program. So the farmers will be developing the nursery in the different farms and distribute to other farmers. So all of that is working the way to improve the soil quality, to improve the farm's quality and mitigate to the climate change effects. So that's a little bit the experience is shared with the dream team there and what they're doing on the ground with the farmers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Romaric, for that. And you know, this last point about agroforestry, it's emerging as an important component of the research that we're doing. And we talked about biochar in Kilifi, and we're talking about agroforestry in Burkina Faso and Kenya. We were really happy to see that the AgriLinks, which is the blog posting system of USAID, mentioned some of the work where we're looking at climate change adaptation through agroforestry and biochar, but also climate change mitigation. And I put that link there for people who would like to see that. It's going to really be a huge part of our efforts going forward. Okay, El-Fatih, you're back, and you've changed with Beatrice, which is. Did you have a question?
Yes. So we have two calls. So I shared with her the link, and then we appeared.
Sure.
But I was here from the beginning. So thank you very much, David, and thank you all, colleagues, for the interesting discussion. I don't want to repeat what is mentioned about the climate change and the onset of the season. That I think is being discussed. But I'm just bringing the point of controlling the pest or looking into the pest, and at the same time somehow forgetting about the pollinators. So we completed a project here at TCP, I think last year, on something called IPPM, Integrated Pest and Pollinators Management, whereby we looked at both. We manage the pollinators, we manage the pests, but at the same time, we look carefully at the pollinators. So we supply the farmers by both IPM and pollinator services. So, but the project was just here in 2 testing sites, I think in Kenya, but you can always have scale this to other countries. And we found that really, when we supply the farmers with the pollinators, the yield of some crops like avocado can really be increased. So I think that's very important for farmers. As Beatrice mentioned, that sometimes we look at the pests, we control them, but at the same time, we're threatening the health and the pollinators' diversity and density. I think the IPPM could also work for somehow improving the livelihood of the farmers for many crops and in many areas in Africa. Thank you very much.
And you know, tree crops like avocados, but also almonds. The industry is collapsing in California because of the drought. And the problem we've had with pollinator decline is an almond problem, because we're moving vast amounts of bees across continental USA for 2 weeks of the year to do pollination. It opens up a tremendous opportunity for Feed the Future countries to enter into the almond market, which is extraordinarily rich, particularly for exports to the US and China. So it's a really important point. We have to think anew and rise with the occasion. I keep on saying that quotation. Right, I'll take from Honduras, Denise.
Hi, David and team. Thank you very much. I just wanted to highlight an additional challenge that we're facing with producers here when we're trying to give recommendations about integrated pest management or organic management. It's not the challenge in the cost or in the awareness of the benefits of these strategies. It's more on the time or the additional labor that it takes for farmers to implement these techniques. And also, how long does it take to observe the results? So I think that this is where the big challenge for the implementation of these techniques lies.
Well, I'm really glad you said that. So you will have seen in a lot of press releases the very important observation by USAID of the success, and this is in the Global Food Security Strategy document, that when we invest in research, we get a 10-to-1 return. This is based upon a study that CJR has done, and lots of people have repeated it. It's a very good study. However, the problem I see with that is that oftentimes it takes too long to see those changes, because oftentimes what CJR has done very excellently and should continue to do is develop new races, new breeds, and so on, and breed for resistance, which they should continue. But because of climate change, I think we need to have a 10-to-1 return on our investment in a single season. I think we need to be able to show a farmer that if we do this, you'll get more productivity. That was a point that Liverson made very clearly. So we need to keep on breeding new varieties, but at the same time, we need to have this 10-to-1 return in a single season. And I think that with certain approaches, really moving towards resilience rather than responses. I'm an outsider to plant pathology. I don't consider myself a plant pathologist. And I sort of have some concerns about the whole naming of it. Pathology by definition is looking at something that's dead. But we need to have plant health rather than plant pathology. We need to build in resilient systems, resilient economic systems. So as El Fatih said, and Beatrice, if we have pollinators, it's an additional source of income. If we have agroforestry, it's additional source of income. If it's multiple crops, and so on and so forth, to build that resilience at the farm level. Thank you so much. Ram?
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Ram Kharka. I'm working with the Nepal Agricultural Research Council in Kathmandu. I just want to bring the point about the alarming situation of the citrus greening disease in citrus fruit in Nepal. Generally, we advise the farmers to establish the nursery in above 1,000 meters from the sea level, because we believe that the vector of the citrus greening disease, Citrusilla, generally doesn't exist above that height. But recently we reported that the Citrusilla from around 1,100 meters from the sea level. That means the vector of this disease is climbing off, and we cannot advise the farmers anymore to protect the crop, to make the seedling free from the citrus greening by growing in in the height. And so this is one of the big issue here. And so another thing is we don't have enough testing facility in Nepal. And so we have few testing lab, but they have a big pressure, huge pressure. They cannot provide the sufficient testing facility to the nursery growers. And I read some paper about use of dog, the trained dog, to detect the citrus greening in the farmers' fields from California and Florida, I guess. And so if we can use such techniques in Nepal, and so we can detect the disease in early stages, so that the farmers can remove the plants and to protect the crop from to check the spread of this disease. And so if this project can link us to the group working in this aspect, would be great. And so I just want to put this point here.
Yeah, can you drop your email in there, Ram? And we'll link you. There's a USDA project which is working a lot on greening, of course, in the US, and we can link you to a variety of researchers. Yes, they've used dogs and spectrophotometry, and then rapid diagnostic tests. These are certainly the things we want to leverage our platform for, the cross-pollination and fertilization of ideas. Okay, I would happily continue this conversation for another few hours, but we're at 10 o'clock, so we've come to the end. I have to say it's been extraordinarily wonderful. I don't know if Serge, Annalise, and Melissa want to just kind of say something as we close out here. Serge, would you like to go ahead and give a reflection?
Yes, great conversation, and that's really opening some different topics like we talk, and like the last greening situation. Everybody bring good ideas, and we're really looking for this type of conversation. When you send the 2 paragraphs or other, we can have a call and talk in details about the issues you are facing. And if we have other ideas on, put you in connection with some other people like in the land grant university working the same topic, just to first open the conversation and improve what we think is emerging or the current threats. Maybe to initiate the conversation and look forward for the proposal in the future. So yeah, thank you for your participation in the ideas, and we look forward for your emails and the conversations we'll have with you. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add on top of that, other than it is extremely exciting to participate in this, and mainly just to hear from all of your experiences and knowledge from the areas that you're coming from, and to have such a global participation here is truly excellent. From my standpoint, I've seen the number of registrants increase each day that we've hosted this Innovation Lab meeting. And so I really hope that we can continue the conversation in the form of a regular meeting schedule, where we just all show up and talk like we did today about what's happening, and then we can share ideas and discuss different technologies that are being applied. I think if you take a look at the chat, it's been incredibly active the entire time of this meeting. And so I'm looking forward to see the partnerships that are created from this event as well. So thank you very much.
And beyond what Serge and Annalise have already stated, I would just say that it has been a pleasure to meet each and every one of you, even if it is virtually, and to hear the experience and skills that each of you bring to this table, and the different perspectives, as Annalise had said, a global perspective, because that is I think that is our flagship of this entire program, that we have this global perspective, and everyone is bringing their own expertise and their own skills to the table, which makes us unique and which makes us strong. And in addition, if at any time you find any blockers with, for those of you who are the sub-awardees of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Current and Emerging Threats to Crops, if you find any blockers with payments to your institution or organization, or anything dealing with the financial system, please reach out to me. I'm willing to help to make sure that those blockers are not a blocker, because we have bigger problems to deal with. Obviously, with the current and emerging threats to crops, you don't need to be dealing with blockers with finances. So I'm here to help you. Thank you.
I would just close out by saying that what we say often around here is that it takes a village. And that's why it's called PlantVillage. If it was a village full of blacksmiths, it wouldn't be a good village. You need bakers, and you need people in the fields, and you need blacksmiths. You need all sorts of people in a village. And this diversity that Annalise and Melissa have spoken about, and Serge really strikes that home. So we're very informal, we're very engaging. We love to talk about the details. We hope very much to continue this. We absolutely will continue this conversation. So thank you all. And next time we'll do it en français and also in Spanish and other languages for translation. So thank you all so much indeed for being part of this, particularly the young people, which are really the foundation on which we're building a completely new direction to take forward in controlling current and emerging threats to crops. So thank you all so much indeed. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening, wherever you are. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you and bye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Really.
Merci bien. Au revoir à tout le monde.
Bye. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.